I've already done that. Oh, you mean just me going live on the studio? Like, you mean live on Facebook? That's what you meant.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So, give me a sec here. Trained professional. We're doing this live. So, how you doing tonight, man?
I am well. It's been a good day. How about you?
Crazy. I got a video gig to finish today. I have a
Like you're playing the video game and like it just needs to be beaten today, or it's a work.
no. I do a show. I do a show for Canadian immigration.
Okay.
And so we filmed it. So I got to put it all together tonight. Tomorrow I'm doing a commercial for another client.
Nice.
Yeah, I just tagged you. So yeah, you can go and come and watch. They want to come watch, and if not, they'll definitely get a chance to listen to it later. So
Yeah. Check it out on Twitch and leave comments on Twitch if you guys are watching this. You know, I shared it out myself.
Mm-hmm. So people will come in. We'll just chat. So you found me actually. I didn't find you. You found me.
So, right. We've been in the same zeitgeist for a little bit. We've crossed paths a little bit.
A little bit, yes. Certain people like Chuck Bonneau, Rob Moteri, a few other people like that. Definitely. It's actually kind of like this weird thing. Like yesterday, it was yesterday. I just noticed this. Literally, my friendship thing went from 2120 almost to 2200.
Okay.
Comic people and just it's like suddenly people realized I was there. It's like, oh my god, he's there. You know?
See, I realized the opposite problem yesterday. So, you know, Stephen Sondheim died. I'm sure. Did you hear that?
I've heard that, yeah.
So, like, I got one message on my whole wall about that. And I was like, no, I'm a theater guy. Like, I have hid in the comic world too much. Like, and I'm not getting the other news that I need. So I need non-comic people. So I need to figure out my feed. Because
I have plenty. Like, I've this show has definitely become its own entity. It's any like art you do or whatever it is. It's a reflection of the person doing it.
Right.
So my podcast, for example, I had a heavy metal band last night. Sure. I had so that was cool. I actually got to do a heavy metal band because I like heavy metal. I've been doing a lot more comic stuff in the last little bit, but I still do novelists. I still do actors. I still do like other things. I am interested in many different things. So I just chase all my interest in. But right this minute, comics seems to be where it's all, going right now, and that's cool. And like I said, you found me. I like I said, it's almost like it's kind of weird. Like everybody's finding me right now, which is like. Oh, that's kind of cool. I mean, it's nice to get noticed for what you're doing.
Well, especially when we have a similarity right now. So my next book is Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, and you just came out with an Alice book.
It's out tomorrow. Well, right. yeah, it's out tomorrow. So yeah, it's mine is epic poetry with illustrations. So it's not quite a comic,
right?
But it's definitely. I would be lying if I didn't say that comic books have not influenced my writing style for sure. It's like I've been reading. You were gonna say something.
No, go continue.
Yeah, so I was doing. Let's see. I read Green Lantern when I was 8. I read the Valiant Comics line growing up in high school.
Right.
This new stuff. I finally got hip and trendy in like my late 20s, early 30s. But like I just kept finding all the really good books, right, in comics in the in that.
Sure.
Now that I'm getting old and stuff, now it's just like, what do I really like? And now I'm going back to almost what I did as a kid. What books feel like the most fun? But when I approach my art, it's very much the same thing. Where am I going to have the most fun doing stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think comics are a very hard medium, if you think about the way it works, because people want comics to read comics and stories, but there's something about comics that it has to be cool, right? Sandman is cool and thought provoking. Right? But the comics that are just thought provoking don't tend to work because it needs that cool element. Spawn isn't a great character, but Spawn is cool as hell to look at with all his chains and the giant cape.
Well, Spawn's like this kid's like a little kid's worst nightmare. That's literally how
Right.
that's literally how to describe it because like he's got blades coming out of his like you're just looking at him and you're just like that just hurts me looking at you. It just hurts, and let alone whatever it is you do, but you just hurt me looking at you. And
Right.
that's Spawn. But Spawn's that like the '90s was such an interesting time in comics because it was just like everything. It was almost like we were coming down from the '80s. So
Mm-hmm.
there's early '90s, which is everything's like balls to the wall, still like from the late '80s,
Right.
right? And then there's like that come off point of we need to tell like back to like the old stories again, and that was again there's that evolution. But in the early '90s there was Spawn, Young Blood, like Rob Liefeld is like the king of steroids, like in terms of
Sure.
like in terms of like that kinetic energy of Eric Larson, Savage Dragon, right? Which to his credit is still around.
Right. And in my humble opinion, is more impressive than Spawn. So Spawn hit the 301, yes, but Savage Dragon is going to hit the 301, and when that hits 301, Eric Larson wrote every issue and drew every issue completely, where Todd McFarlane didn't do that.
Yeah,
Right. So they're not the same. Yes, he hit the number first, but Eric Larson's is far more impressive. And Cerebrus, when he hit 300, was all done by him. That
oh,
was
absolutely.
so.
Dave Sim is he's a genius.
Yeah.
But he is a genius. He's also insane, but he's a genius. 300 comics would drive you nuts.
Well, what's cool about like Eric? It's such an important part of him. I don't know if you remember, but like issue 14 or whatever, they did everybody switches characters, so a new thing. He actually wrote an alternate 14 to put in that spot. That's all written by him, even though he participated in that. I mean, how crazy is that? Because he wanted to write all of them straight through.
Well, so I mean, if you talk about the big difference between Eric Larson and Tom McFarlane is Tom McFarlane. I mean, don't get me wrong, he loves what he does.
Oh yeah,
Or he wouldn't be doing it. But in terms of rolling your sleeves up, doing the work yourself, I don't know if there's anybody in comics that loves that more than Eric Larson. And I say that with the utmost of respect. The only other person I can think of, there's two other people. Sergio Aragonis,
sure.
Stan Sakai.
I can see that, but again, Eric, I think is the king of that because Eric doesn't care if anybody's reading Savage Dragons. He doesn't care.
Yes.
It's still coming out. Like he's gonna keep doing it. He doesn't care if you read it. Like it's for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's his passion. Like
Right.
you can truly see that with him. I admire that. I mean, he's probably in terms of the ideal of what Image Comics is all about. It's probably Eric. Eric Larson is probably the man. Now I hate his Aquaman run because I'm like one of only 20 people in the world that like Aquaman. But really he followed Peter David's run, which was really good. And I hate that run for the most part. But I love his Savage Dragon. I enjoyed his Hulk. I enjoyed a lot of dude's a very passionate, creative dude. He is. There's nothing. I don't know if there's anything I can say about that time that is terrible. He is without a doubt. If not, I probably want to be probably the most underrated of all of the Spawn, the Image creators.
Image creators. Yeah. Because you really only hear about the three, right? There's more than the three, but four. You hear about Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Eric Larson, and Todd McFarlane. Will Sebastião, and they're all there, but those are the four. Those are the four superstars. And the rest are heavy minor leagues, or those four are Scotty and Michael Jordan, and the rest are the rest of the Bulls, who I don't know.
That's cool. I would argue Mark Silvestri's in that list too.
He is, but he comes and goes, right? Compared to everybody else. Rob Liefeld, even though he's not doing something, is always like doing a cover somewhere or like ruining G.I. Joe or whatever he's doing.
Ruining G.I. Joe. Oh God. I actually think he'd do good at G.I. Joe because really it sounds like it'd be right up his alley, right?
Right.
Right. You have these over the top, super powered dudes that would just you know just go nuts fighting like this evil organization. I mean, dude, we all know G.I. Joe was basically the cartoon was just a cover up so we'd watch, we'd buy the toys. Like, I mean, it's totally about that. So you get them mashed with toys all day long. I honestly think Liefeld would do that really well. I honestly think he'd be great at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's done the, he did it for a little bit, the covers and all that, the Snake Eyes little run that he did. He did some stuff. Good morning. Love him or hate him, the guy has so much passion for this industry. He really does. Like, make fun of his feet, make fun of his art, but he has passion. He if you sit in the room with a Rob Liefeld, he's going to get you excited about comics. Like, it doesn't matter if you hate comics or you love comics or you haven't read in years, he's going to get you that excitement because he loves it like a kid. Like, he loves big and giant and explosions. But those guys were all artists, like we were talking about, like, it ebbs and flows. Like, right now we're in a writer's, like, are running comics, but that'll flow back to artists in just a short amount of time.
It's kind of shifting back that way anyway, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's shifting that way. I mean, Saga is probably the best modern book of the last 10 years. I don't know. There are a few in that league, but that one was running the most consistent.
Right.
And honestly, going back on that run, I mean, Fiona Staples is now the head credit, not Brian K. Vaughan. Now, granted, Vaughan doesn't need it. There's definitely some truth to that, but yeah, I mean, you can also start seeing, like, I'm looking at Colleen Doran's going to be doing A Distant Soil next year again. Like, she's going back to her work. I'm looking at the fact that, like, you have people like that who can do incredibly creative stuff on both sides of the table, and you can, like, again, Terry Moore, another guy who can do incredible things by himself, right? And just like I maybe I overestimate this a little bit, but I recognize this because I've done a comic myself. It's the artist does a lot of the heavy lifting, and
there's I just listened to an interview with Todd McFarlane where he was talking to Donnie Cates, and he says, he's like, I don't care who you are or how good of a talent of a writer you are. 60% of that book is done by the artist, because if it's not good looking, it doesn't matter how well it's written. It's that 40% that's going to keep them going to the next issue. Absolutely. That 40% is super important, but that 60%, that grabbing the shelf, thumbing through it, that's all salesmanship from the artist side. Keeping them engaged, that's the 40 to get them to the next issue, sure, but it's a 60%, and that was pretty humbling, kind of hearing that and talking to that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I would probably go a little farther. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with Todd, but here's the thing: you can do a good story without words in comics.
Sure,
you can do it. It's been done, and it's amazing when it's done well. But it's much harder to do that the other way, right? Right. It's so much more. It's so much trickier. Now you can do some creative things with words. One of my favorite books, Understanding Comics, which is Scott McCloud's like whole take on how books are put together, shows you some interesting things you can definitely do. But when it comes right down to it, right? Like, the art is the heavy lifting. Always has been.
Yeah, I mean, even look at, take Bendis's early work, The Jinx or Goldfish, where he was taking the photography, because he didn't know how to draw as well and kind of tracing over. It was something unique, even though he knew that his words were going to get it, because Brian Michael Bendis is known for his dialogue. That's just what he is. I like hunting for comics I never saw before. Awesome, man. You're in the right place.
Yeah, you are.
But but because Brian's writing is the heavy lifting, that's why there's a lot of word bubbles and a lot of arguments. That's kind of what he's famous for. But at the end of the day, he knows that Miles Morales had to be cool as hell to make it be better than Peter Parker, to make it people resonate like we need to have that.
Yeah, no, I think to me, I don't know if Bendis will ever top his original Ultimate Spider-Man run. I don't know if he'll ever top that. That was an incredibly good retelling of Spider-Man all the way
Right.
around. But I look at the fact that when I look at Bendis, actually my favorite work of his is Scarlet. I enjoyed his Scarlet series. I thought that was actually I like his creator-owned stuff a lot better than his superhero stuff.
Yeah. I mean, Jinx and Goldfish are two of my favorite comics of all time. I'm a huge crime guy. I sent you my folder. I don't know if you got to broke that, but I love crime comics. And just to give you my history of Brian Michael Bendis, like I was an early adapter. Like I read all that indie stuff. I even went to Negative Burn. One of my first works was in Negative Burn because I collected all his Negative Burn work. I'm in Negative Burn. That was a staple for me. That was super important to
Yeah.
be in Negative Burn because I wanted to be with the Gaimans and the Alan Moores and the David Max and the Brian Michael Bendis and the all those guys. Like that was so important to me to be in that. So when he went to Marvel and it was a retelling of Spider-Man, I felt he sold out and didn't buy it, even though I wanted him to go. But at the time we had Chapter 1 Spider-Man being redone by John Burns. So there was already a rehashing of Spider-Man's story because that Chapter 1 was like kind of the hidden tales of Spider-Man in continuity. So I was just like, man, this isn't going to work. Like, why are you doing it? And then I don't care who you are, that first issue is nothing happens. Like, because he takes it to set up. It pays off later, absolutely, in dividends. But that first issue, nothing happens. It's just Norman Osborn like running a lab. And like the bite of the spider is at the end of the first issue. He's not even Spider-Man in that first issue. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, well, he's going with a very different take, like the pacing of it. For example, you actually got to know Uncle Ben,
Right, sure.
which is something that the original Spider-Man, you liked Uncle Ben because he was the short time he was in the book, you liked him,
Right.
but you didn't really know him. You really, really, really never really knew him. So Bendis's best quality is when he's on his game, when he's absolutely at the top of his game. He brings up the humanity in his characters better than just about any other writer currently out there. When he's at the absolute best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, at his worst, he's because he's so naturally good at dialogue. Sometimes he just rides it, and when he shouldn't. But
and I think one of the things that makes people mad about Bendis is for a fact because you've read his writing that he knows continuity. So when he actively avoids like continuity that everybody should know, you get a little mad because he's actively doing it for the story, which is I get, but because he knows it, because he'll use in the same issue like deep cut continuity, and then this other part, we're gonna ignore that. You're like, why? You can't do that. You can't have both.
but I see. I just have a very simple rule when I look at storytelling in general, and this. We all are stealing from somewhere. I think this is where I can respect a creative that's being very selective in terms of what they use for continuity. Right. But here's the rule: whatever whatever you go by, you live by.
Right.
Right. Whatever you go by, you live by. Because what I want is a consistent read, start to finish, and I don't want you to cheat your way out.
Right.
Right. I don't want that. What I want is a good story. Now, if you have that good story, I don't care. I don't need it to be perfectly right because, again, I'm a DC guy, and DC is just at its best is a hot mess in terms of continuity, and
wow.
So I gave up on that. So in terms of so I just want a good story. I want something that engages me. I want something that makes me feel something, and I hope the people, whoever are there, want the same thing. And I'm willing to give them, I'm willing to give everybody the benefit of the doubt but you screw with your own continuity,
right?
Then I get a little mad. Like, for example, One More Day broke all those rules. Hey, we want to reset Spider-Man. Okay, cool.
Right.
But you broke every storytelling rule to do it.
Sure.
It was better not to tell that story. I would have just no. It was better not to. It would have been better if they had just, went in, just said, okay, this is the last issue. They do a final story arc for the current run, right? They have a happy ending or an ending or something, and then the next issue, you start all over again. You just say, you know what, and then if there's and then you leave the gap on purpose. Well, what happened? How did that work out? How did that go? Nope, made a deal with the devil. Okay, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think One More Day would have been fine if they didn't keep playing with it, right? For the next 10 years, they tweaked it and played with it and added little variables and this and that. Like, I think the first story, you could have, like, and no one was going to be happy about it because the separating of Mary Jane, no one's going to be happy about that. I totally get why they did it. Like, I get it from a perspective. There's a lot more stories you can tell when they're not married than they are. But so what? The smarter choice was, getting, Miles. Let us have a new Spider-Man that can tell those type of stories and leave, Parker where he's at.
We'll see. So we'll talk about that in just a second there. Boom. Deadpool apparently did a great job. I'm not sure how did Deadpool do a great job there, Rising Fate, but that'll no. I think here's the thing. I think Peter Parker. See, I always loved. Do you remember the MC2 line?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved
Mayday Parker.
Yeah, and I think the idea of like Spider-Man would be a great dad.
Right.
And there are stories you can definitely tell with him in that role. He's older. It's not about him anymore as much. And you could retell some of those stories. Hey, he's a parent. He's got to make sure his kid's fed. Is he a full-time superhero anymore? Is he more worried about like actually getting down and taking care of shit?
Sure.
He still find a way to balance the two. There's a lot you can do with that. I think, right? But that's it. Like it's super. Like I think there was definitely potential for that. I just think when you look at the whole concept, you cheated me. True. Because you did. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I'm paying at that time $2.50, $3 for a book, something like that, and I'm coming every month. If I'm coming every month, I want to pay off.
Right.
I want to be engaged, but I want to pay off to everything I've invested in. The best example of that was, this is like old school, Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man Tomorrow.
Sure, yeah.
Best ending ever. Like the absolute best ending ever. And you just have this ability to have, you get that story. You got the Superman. I got my happy ending. And now we're going to reboot them because we've told everything we want to tell with this particular thing. We want to try different things we can't try because we have this story all told. So we'll finish telling the story. I actually think comics would be farther ahead if they did that. Like I think like DC, Marvel have a creative team. Right. Have the start of the story, a middle of the story, end of the story. You don't have to worry about continuity. Everybody kind of knows these characters, knows where they're going, know how they're going. Have a start, beginning, middle, end. Let everybody tell their story. If there's a sequel, leave a little room for a sequel if you want to do it that way. But if you don't, you shrug. You got another creative team. Take something else and do something else because Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, you name it, they have so much backstory.
Yeah.
No one can keep no one can keep track of it.
And I think that's what DC used to do really well. DC used to be we are the generation, right? There was a time when everybody but Superman was replaced. Batman was replaced. Dick was it for a little bit. You had Azrael for a bit. You had the new Green Lantern or Green Arrow. You had it being his son. Hal was gone. You had Kyle. You had all these characters, they had a legacy and they had these lines and lineages. And then they just do the rebirths. Once rebirths started happening, and you get, because Wally, most people don't even, didn't even know Barry. They knew Wally West because Wally had been there for so long, so switching all that stuff up, where Marvel never did that except for the X-Men. The only one who had generation was the X-Men, because you had X-Men, you had New Mutants, and you had Gen X, and then you had New Class and all that. But Marvel, the rest of it was all status quo. And then, Marvel the last couple of years goes the opposite. And like, no, we're going to replace Thor. We're going to replace all of them. And they do it all at once, and it upset fans. I don't think anybody has a problem with a female Thor. I think they have a problem with a female Thor, a Falcon Cap, all of it at the same time, right? If everything is all changed at the same time, it's not familiar to you, that's when you have an issue. If you want to change one for a few arcs, I think that's okay. Just my thoughts anyways.
Well, I mean, okay, Thor's kind of like an interesting take, because the best Thor book, in my opinion, for the last few years was Walt Simonson's in IDW.
I love Jason Aaron's Thor run, like from beginning to the end. Like I'm all in.
I am. The beginning is awesome. The end's awesome. Female Thor is pretty good, I think, but I do get the sense. I got the sense of the female Thor. There are points in there where he was told, "Oh, by the way, we want you to go a little longer, but I don't have a little longer. Here's money. Shut up." And Jason's like, "Well, okay then." I truly think
you write your it's not Eclipso, whatever the Thor 2 villain was. I can't think of his name.
Malekith.
Malekith,
Yeah. No, that guy.
Thor 2's coming out. We need a Malekith thick story for a year. All right.
Yeah, no. So it was just like one of those situations where I think Aaron's run's good. I think Jason Aaron's run's really good. I think the beginning and end of the female Thor arc are some of the best writings ever done.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, but
man, here's the reality. I got one thing to say, because I got to say it, because I love to let people know, hey, just so you guys know, that saved Thor. It tripled sales, and more people stayed off Thor and kept Thor high after that sale. People always were like, oh, that's why I stopped reading Thor. No, you weren't reading Thor. JMS's run was really, really high, and then it slowly dropped in Jason Aaron's. But when he had Lady Thor, it popped back up, and it stayed there for the rest of his run. It saved Thor. And people don't like to talk about that because it doesn't fit the narrative of like these alternate characters hurt things.
Well, I do think they can hurt things.
Sure,
yeah. I think it's done. In my opinion, Wally West is a better Flash than Barry Allen.
Great.
My opinion. I like Kyle, but I think Kyle's a better Green Lantern than him. But I think, I've said this a few times on this show. The real money with the Green Lantern Corps, in my opinion, is John Stewart.
Yeah, I actually found, and it took me a few generations to do it, I don't like single Green Lanterns. When it's the Corps, I'm all about it. So when it's Corps focused, I'll buy it. Even Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison's a great run. I dropped Green Lantern. Hadn't dropped it in years because I was like, you know what? I don't want to see a Hal story. I've seen enough Hal stories. I'm done.
I enjoyed Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp.
I heard it's fantastic. I didn't.
No. I'll tell you why I enjoyed it particularly. I have some of the original Silver Age books. I have the first appearance of Destro. I have the first appearance of Evil Star. They were doing a lot of the pre-Green Lantern, Green Arrow run, like the really old, pulpy,
Brave and the Bold stuff.
Right, Meridian, who hadn't been a villain in GL since like issue 101. I mean, like from that era, like something from so long ago. Also, that particular issue is probably the best issue of that entire run, all the way around. Just really, really good stuff. But N.K. Jemison's Far Sector is actually a better run than Grant Morrison's Green Lantern run. Although, like I said, it's fun. It's a fun, cool run that I think down the road people will appreciate a little bit more, because it is an old school pulp book. That's all it is. It's all it tries to be. But for me, looking at legacy characters, I think there has to be a reason to care. I think sometimes it's finding the voice for that reason to care. Kyle Rayner is Peter Parker in DC. That's who he is. That's what he is, and that works for him. I like John because I think John's a badass. He's the one I'm the biggest fan of. I think he's the most money in the entire franchise, in my opinion. If you are going to do solo, but that's me. That's my opinion. Then you look at, like, say, Superman. Jonathan Kent taking over is a neat idea. I think could be a lot of fun. Damian Wayne being Robin, I think, is an awesome choice. I think Tim Drake should be Batman. I think Tim Drake would be a very interesting. That would be such an interesting evolution of his character, because I think Nightwing is kind of his own thing, and I don't think you should touch that. Right? There are so many of these characters in DC that, like, they have replaced me. Sure, it can be done well if I have a reason to care. Looking at Marvel, I'm not sure there's a reason to care as Falcon as Captain America.
Sure.
Just because I honestly think Captain America would be kind of really fun to do as an old school World War II comic. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I think you could do a lot of cool stories with that.
I think, unfortunately, with America being so polarized as a country, it's really hard to do Captain America right? Because the American voice is split. So whoever's writing that is going to lean one way or the other. So unless you literally take 50s values, which we don't always agree with in 2021, that would be kind of hard to do. That's
but I think that would make that an interesting book.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we don't agree. Right. And I think, see, good art, in my opinion, should challenge our perceptions. So going back to something like you think is very antiquated and morality that by and large we don't use anymore. Cool. One of the things about that time I think that's really, really interesting, and I think it would be a cool wrinkle to them. I tend to think that as a whole, there's more integrity than there is now. My opinion, just based on the ethos I have seen from my leaders. I'd like to think, maybe I'm being delusional, that there was a little more integrity back then. And I think someone like that would be a little bit more open and honest. Wrong on other things, sure. But I think that open and honesty would actually be refreshing. It'd be a very different perspective than what a lot of people do today. I think you could do it. I think that's, again, the fish out of water concept can work with Cap, in my opinion. But like I said, if it's not Steve Rogers, I don't think it works. Just like as much as Jonathan Kent is be a cool Superboy, I'm not sure he'd be a good Superman, right?
I would like to see that. I would like to see him prove that he's not Superman. Like, there is only one Superman, and I think that's important for the DC universe. Like, Superman is Superman. There's something about him, the way he was raised and stuff. And I don't think when your dad is running off hitting things, and you aged him. Brian Michael Bendis aged him. It's really hard to do those things.
I hated that.
Sure.
So much. I hated that so much because I thought Super Sons is a great book. Like, such a good book. And
I'm good friends with the inker.
What?
I'm good friends with the inker, Matt.
Yeah. So it was such a good book. It was honestly, it's probably the best thing DC's had come out in years. Peter Thomas is a great writer, don't get me wrong, but he got those two so well. It was like, it's the best aspects of the brave and the bold, and it had just enough of a young adult. Like, it was almost perfect. Right. So I do like the idea of Jonathan Kent in the 30th century. I think that's actually a really great idea.
Yeah.
The old school Superboy and Legion superheroes is always a fun thing to play with. But I think it would have been much more interesting if he was the kid. That would have been a much more interesting story, in my opinion. But again, they make their decisions for whatever reasons they want to make them. So let them make the decisions however they want to make them. And I think the one thing about comics, I think the great thing about comics is, like, not every book's made for me. And not even the characters I really like and respect are not made for me necessarily.
Right.
And I'm fine with that. I still have my characters that I grew up reading and I enjoyed. I don't need my characters to be the same thing forever, because they're not going to be. And I don't think in that environment, Marvel and DC, I don't think they should be. I think you should take chances with all of these characters. I mean, hell, look at. I mean, you want to talk about characters that they've been playing with and changing and shaping as time has gone on. Look at Harley Quinn.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
even look at like I think the reason why everyone hates Captain Marvel too, like that character's continuity is so messed up. Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't even know what it is. Like that's why you can keep forcing her, but she's never going to sell well because when someone does some deep cuts, they're not going to understand what's happening, and that's their fault. Like I think that Marvel and DC have to take credit for some of those things. I think DC tried to clean up things with New 52, but I think they also really messed things up too when they're like, "Oh, here's the New 52." But Batman and Green Lantern are basically they haven't changed. Well, no, like come on, if we're going to change stuff and make things drastically different, let's do that, right? Don't just take what you like.
Well, or if you do take what you like, be consistent. Again,
Right, be consistent. Sure, yeah.
be consistent in the continuity you set for yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Because Red Lantern was awesome. I wish that book still exists.
Which one?
The Red Lantern Corps.
Oh, it was interesting.
I love Guy as a Red Lantern. That made sense to me.
Uh so I'm 50-50 on that because I think there was definitely what I call lantern fatigue because there's
Sure.
just so much color like blah. But if you are going to if you're going to do another lantern series, right? The Red Lantern series is probably the best one, right? I think you could do an anthology kind of thing with the purple ones, the compassion ones.
Yeah.
But I don't think you could do a regular book with them. I like the Yellow Lanterns as bad guys. They're just better. They're much more better when they're not on the main focus. But if you were going to pick one of those lanterns, like, yeah, you could do a red one. You could do a red book. That would be a lot of fun to read and do. So the character I have the most hit and miss relationship with is Wonder Woman.
Okay.
Because for me, it's like when she's written well, she's great.
Sure.
When she's not, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, she's the problem. I think Wonder Woman. The negative of Wonder Woman is she has to stand for so many things that she almost stands for nothing because it's really based on kind of the same problem that Captain America has. It depends on the writer what way she turns. Sometimes she's all about killing her foes, not a big deal. Sometimes she's just like Superman and Batman. Hey, we have these moral compasses. I love one of my favorite lines in all of comics is Wonder Woman looking to Batman and Superman is like, and she's like, "Hey, you know why I don't have the big rogues gallery that you guys do? Because I take care of my problems." And like, it's like, oh damn.
No, she's a badass. I think I like her best when she's a more extreme version of both of them in that she's a warrior first. I think that's one thing Rucker got with her really really well is is you know he's a she's willing to kill. Now she doesn't like to do it, she doesn't enjoy it, and she has to be pushed to that point.
Right.
But once she's there, she'll commit to it. I really like. I think that's what makes one of the things that makes her interesting. I think the problem is she's not as a lot like Superman and Wonder Woman have the same problem. They don't fit in every story.
Right.
They just don't. Batman, you can literally do anything with him. It doesn't really matter. You can put him in outer space. You can put him in the Antarctic. You can put him under the sea. You can make him a woman. You can do anything you want to. Listen, 1960s Adam West Batman, people still pop for it.
Right.
And this is to do with anti-woman spray. I mean, seriously. I mean, it's just one of those like dumb like things, these throwaway things. But that's because Batman's such an elastic character. I can't do that with Wonder Woman. I can't do that with Superman. Now I can do other things with Superman. I can do other things with Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, I want an epic fantasy. With Superman, I can make it a kid's book and a really good kid's book, and I think it will do really really well as a kid's book. But that's not necessarily how people see it. But it's like some kid made him up, so he made someone up that was bulletproof. This kid, like Superman's literally the product of a kid's imagination.
Right.
Put him in silly shit. Like have him do the silliest stuff possible. It works. It's Superman, right? He can be silly. I don't want a grim and gritty dark Superman. Does not fit, right? Irredeemable. is that.
And I think one of my favorite runs for Superman in the last few years was when JMS grounded him and he just walked the earth like Kang. And he was just walking and seeing what people were going through, like on the ground level, not above it. I thought it was a fascinating little run. He helped a kid who was being abused by his dad. Like, no supervillain, but I was far more intrigued than that and anything else. And I'm not a huge Superman guy. Like, my favorite Superman story is the one where he died. I'm not a huge
That's fucking dead. Just dead.
Yeah, dead. Dead is the best Superman you can have because I'm a Marvel guy, right? So Superman is the icon. Like, if you're a Marvel guy, Superman is your number one icon of like, he's why I don't like DC. He's perfect. He can never lose. He's stronger than everything. Blah blah blah. And Marvel, everybody has their vulnerability and stuff. My guy is Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. I've been saying a lot. Oh no, all right, still here. I've been saying a lot. What I spend more time with Spider-Man than I do real people in my life. Like, literally, I know more about his history and stuff, and he's going to outlive me. Like, his family and friends are going to outlive me, and he was around before I existed. He has this mess. He's more real than some of my friends because of how invested I am in him. And there's something powerful and good about Spider-Man. And he can make a mistake and you forgive him every time, which I think is just wonderful. Where Superman, if he makes a mistake, it blows up on the internet, right? Like, Superman, how dare you ruin Superman? Versus Spider-Man, if Spider-Man accidentally kills somebody, you're like, well, let's hear it out. Let's hear what happened. If Superman kills somebody, no, how did Superman? He would never do that. Like Superman the movie.
But it also speaks to what you can do with the characters. Spider-Man is classically, he's Percival. Like,
sure.
He's of the Knights of the Round. He's a classic Percival type archetype character. He doesn't know everything. He fucks up. Uncle Ben's death is Percival's holy grail. He screws up, damages his family irreparably. So he has to make amends, and he tries. And what makes Spider-Man heroic isn't the fact that he wins every battle or that he's like everybody, in the sense that he goes out there and he does the best he can. Sometimes he's an asshole. Sometimes he's a complete dick. Sometimes, sometimes he makes you laugh. Sometimes he'll make you cry because you're with him. Like, one of the cool things about Spider-Man in terms of just a literary trick, he doesn't know very much about the world around him. He's learning and discovering like we are. Right. I think one of the reasons why like Ultimate Spider-Man worked was the argument to keep Peter Parker young is just this point. You lose that wonder a little bit.
Sure.
Right? That's the argument to keep him young. The flip side is, I think if he had a kid, you could recapture it through the kid. I think you also very, very subtly, if you do it right, have the kid take over the book, and it would, and I don't think anybody would complain. But that's the argument to keep him young, is that wonder, that innocence, that he doesn't know everything, he hasn't done everything, he's learning, he's discovering, he's trying. Sometimes he wins, sometimes he fails. I love JMS's run of Spider-Man's really good, but my favorite one is the 500th issue, where he relives every single one of his failures as a birth. It was like the happy birthday thing was such a really cool homage to who Spider-Man was. He was put back through every hard moment in his life, all of them. And there's a moment he nearly broke because he knows how bad he's failed.
Right.
But what makes him so human is that he gets up. And again, the second half where he's literally redoing every one of his labors, just trying, knowing he's going to fail.
Right, yeah.
But he did it anyway. That is an amazing, that's heroic. And then at the very end, since we're going full circle with Uncle Ben here, he got 5 minutes with Uncle Ben. Just fun. What a birthday present that is for a character, right? You can never get that back. But to get a little piece for just 1 minute, and his uncle's proud of him. Are you happy? Are you happy with your life? What a wonderful story! Like, that is probably it's my favorite Spider-Man story, because it's not. It's that moment where you take a step and you look back and see how far you've come, in spite of everything you think. Because sometimes, I mean, we all know this as creatives. what are we doing? Like we ask ourselves, what are we doing sometimes? What are
Right.
we doing? What am I crazy to do this? Am I on something or on something? I don't know. And there are days you just wonder, what are you doing? Once in a while, it's great to watch. Just look back. I mean, I saw like when you show me your stuff, dude. That's a lot of comics you've made, man. You
Yeah.
should be
Thanks.
very, very proud of yourself. That's awesome,
Yeah.
right? But it's so easy to take that stuff for granted. Sometimes we only look at our failures. If anything, that's right. That's what makes Spider-Man such an intriguing character, and that's what makes human beings so interesting. It's not that we win or lose. It's what battles do we try to fight for? What really matters to us? What do we care about? Right? Spider-Man has a very human touch that way that Superman and Wonder Woman just cannot have.
Right. Well, I don't think anybody in DC, they don't have a Spider-Man. They keep trying to put, like, Kyle's close. I completely agree with you. But again, Kyle, like, they've done so much of that character, made him basically Jesus with the White Lantern stuff. It's really tough. Growing up, like, I came from a broken home. My parents were both drug addicts, partying, doing all sorts of inappropriate things. But I had comic books, and I learned my values from Spider-Man, like, literally, and from Iron Man and the choices they were making, and watching, like, hey, my friend Norman's doing this bad thing, but not Harry's doing this bad thing, but I love Harry, so how can I figure that out? Like, that's the things that I was going through, and like protecting your family, choosing to get Aunt May that medicine versus fighting the bad guy or fighting the world around you. That's more important. Like, learning that structure. I learned all those things from comic books. They taught me those values. And that was so important in watching their mistakes, right? Watching, no, not necessarily like Spider-Man going to Black Cat and like, hey, am I going to cheat on Mary Jane at that time? What does that look like? Because that's things I was reading at the time. He was flirting with the idea when he got the black costume and a little more confidence. Oh, people are attracted to me, but they weren't. If you remember, Black Cat wasn't attracted to him. He made her, when they were dating, he made her wear the black mask. He always had to kiss her with the mask on because she was attracted to Spider-Man, not to Peter Parker. And like knowing that sometimes the things that you do, people love that more than the person you are. Like, that's some deep stuff that I learned very early on. I didn't know how to unpack it until I got way older, sure. But the comics showed me like, hey,
Sure.
this shit happens.
And a big thing about me is I look back at facing fears, and the only way to go face them is to confront them, and that's a very Green Lantern-esque thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's a very Green Lantern-esque thing, and so, and based on my own life experiences too, just not much scares me anymore. Doesn't mean I can't get scared. Certainly can, but I don't react to fear the same way a lot of other people do.
Right.
So I try to face it almost always, even if I do get my ass kicked sometimes. I try to face the things that make me uncomfortable. So that's the only way you grow. Like I said, but that's the thing. Like, that's what makes Spider-Man such an appealing hero. What I always hated about Spider-Man isn't so much the character. It's like why I like the X-Men too. What I hated was it was the 20 freaking books that came with it. If you wanted to,
Sure.
I was going to collect Spider-Man. This is what I hate. This is the thing I absolutely 100% hate about Marvel more than anything else. I get it. It sells. I totally understand their reasoning for it. But I like variety. Like, I like Ninja Turtles. I like Green Lantern. I also like Saga. I like when he does a good book, something from Jonathan Hickman, right? When
sure.
Yeah, because it, and I should just clarify what I mean by that. He doesn't get bored and walks off. Like, I love Manhattan Projects, but I was so pissed. He lost the plot somewhere, I think, in year 2, and he just didn't care anymore, and you could tell, and it was like,
right.
I hate that version. I love the Jonathan Hickman that does this incredible world building stuff and just builds a world start to finish. He has one of the coolest world building stuff. One of my favorite Marvel books, I think that's incredibly underrated, is Secret Warriors. I love that book. It's so good.
Well, his Secret Wars is literally the best written Marvel thing ever. Like, it gave you everything you love. If you love Marvel Universe, you love Secret Wars. And compare that to Dark Metal, which just tried to do the same thing, which didn't succeed as well as Secret Wars, in my opinion.
No, like I said, so like when he's on, he's incredible. Like, he's an incredible world builder. I love that stuff. But when he gets lazy, and there's sometimes you just feel it's like he loses interest in the book, and it kills me because it's like because what you can see it sometimes in his stuff, and you're just like, dude, just finish your story, just finish it, right? I like just finish your story because that's what loses like you lose customers that way. Like I don't always, as much as I love his writing, and I'm sure again he's not hurt by sales from losing sales from me, but I'm again it's one of those things. I can tell when you get bored, and that's fine. You get bored. I'm not telling you not to get bored, but finish your story then and move on. Just move on, right? And tell something that engages you, or take a break. Just say you're taking a break. Don't say the book is late. Just say, you know what, I'm bored and I can't do this justice. I'd respect that. I would absolutely respect that. But like I said, I like variety. I just like great books. But if I was going to get Marvel's like X-Men or Spider-Man, I wouldn't have that. And if I was that much of a continuity freak, right? Actually X-Men taught me how to go completely forego continuity. I decided, okay, what books look like fun, right? And I'll get those. And in the last, like in the Krakoa era, that's Marauders and Excalibur. I love both books; they're fun. Kitty Pryde as a pirate's fucking cool. And
see, I couldn't, and probably it's a continuity thing. I couldn't buy a book with the Marauders name on it. Like I just couldn't. I know it's the best book. Everyone tells me it's the best book. But for me, I was like, fun. I was like, it's Marauders on the cover. I couldn't. But I'm with you. I started very heavy with Jonathan Hickman, and as he's progressed, I'm like, you know that X of Swords thing. Like literally, there's only like 3 sword fights in the whole thing. Like I'm like, I don't even know what's happening. We're wasting our time. Yeah. But and that's what they do with X-Men. X-Men, they're like, hey, let's revamp every 5 years. Let's revamp completely from the ground up. And you stop caring after a while. You really do.
Yeah, well, like again, I don't. Marvel doing all their reboots, like that's like to me, it's a really simple concept. Okay, sure. You want to reboot? That's totally fine. But here's what you do: not while the same creative team's there. Just not when, just let the same creative team tell their story, right? And then when they go, relaunch it with the next team. I get, you know what, this sounds very much like how novels do it. It works with novels. I'm good with that. Like, give me my whole story. Give me that investment, right? Now, I might leave. At the same time, I might be actually inclined to come back because if you're just going to drag me around and I'm never going to get my payoff,
right?
Or you're just going to reboot it after, like, that's what happened to Deadpool. Like, Deadpool was one of their hottest books, and they ran it to the ground.
Yeah. Well, I've never liked Deadpool, but that's again a personal. It's because I love comics so much. Yeah. So someone who comes into Deadpool's fine in his own book, but you put him in my other books, and then he's breaking the fourth wall and ruining my flow of story. Like, I didn't sign up for that, right? Why are you in my doing this to my book? That's not what I signed up for.
See, I loved him in when X-23 was Wolverine. I loved him in that book.
Yeah, I like that X-Force run with him and the Punisher was in X-Force for a little bit with
no, I know what I'm talking about is like
Thunderbolt. That was Thunderbolts.
Yeah. That was fine. Thunderbolts was cool, but the one I really liked, the one I really dug, was X-23's Wolverine run when she was Wolverine. Tim Taylor's a great writer. Like,
yeah.
Really is. But I like Honey Badger, the clone of Laura that kind of like she was taking care of.
Yeah.
Deadpool was this homicidal uncle that it was actually kind of sweet. Like I actually it was honestly probably my favorite Deadpool because he still had his crazy, but he also legitimately gave a shit about like Laura, Honey Badger, and Laura, and he cared about them. Now, it's not something you wanted every issue, but one of my favorite like little one and dones he had in his run was Honey Badger looking to solve a problem, and she's like she calls Deadpool, and then Deadpool's on the other end killing somebody like because it's Deadpool, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So listen, I need your help. Oh, I'll be there. What do you need? It's like, yeah, didn't she told him? It's like, okay, give me about 20 minutes, I'll be there. And you see blind, he's finishing killing these guys off while he's talking to her on the phone. So he's a little deranged, but there was legitimately a very sweet relationship there. It was like, and honestly, I'm not gonna lie. At this particular point, it's probably gonna piss off some fanboys. I really preferred X-23 as Wolverine than I prefer Logan as Wolverine at this point. For the simple reason, there's more you can do with her than you can with him.
Well, I heard this Benjamin Percy run is really good. I picked up the Maverick run of it, but again, X-Men took so much of my money. Like I couldn't choose between the two, so I chose not Wolverine because over time the Wolverine stuff ends up not mattering, right? Like if you look at history, the Wolverine, like look at you can probably buy every Wolverine issue besides the first few for less than $20, like an issue, like all the way back. Yeah. Because like it just never ended up mattering, which is not for someone who has the legacy that he has should be that way, right?
He's caught in a weird trap. Batman's caught in the same trap right now, in that I don't want to read another Batman story, but they're kind of stuck because Batman just is.
Sure, right.
But I hate it. I can't. It's like there's been some fun Batman and Robin runs, like talking about Grant Morrison. His Batman and Robin one was awesome. I love his take. I love that, like Damian as Robin, Dick Grayson. That was, I love that little run. But no, looking back on it, like big time comics. The big thing is you gotta understand. Like, I get it. It's a business. Like someone is being a professional. I totally understand it. They gotta make the best decisions with their properties as they think possible. Right. And Marvel and DC but Marvel has hit this point. DC's been there for about 30 years. They have so much continuity now and the solution is really, like I said, is really simple. What you do is you just divide it into runs of creative teams. Sure. You market the teams on top of the characters, so that you have this legacy material that you can constantly sell and resell at that point. That would be the way to do it, right? But they don't market their teams like their creative teams like they should in the time they have them. So
people are messaging me like crazy. I apologize.
No, it's okay. But that's kind of how I see it. Like in terms of, that's the thing. Like there's a balancing act there, I think. And again, I get it. I'm not gonna like. There's going to be a Kyle Rayner down the road that I'm not going to like.
Sure.
I'm going to be okay with it though when that time comes. Simply because I've had my run. I still got all my issues. Right. And if I want to every once in a while go back in time and get that fix, I got my books for that. Like I really do. Right. So they'll never go away. And you can make them matter at least to a point, if nothing else. Right? Because what they mean to you. And I think that's what a good comic should be the goal of a good comic.
Well, and I think that was the point of death metal. Yeah. Like to say all of your stories matter. They're not going to always matter like when you want them to matter, but they all matter. They're all them and they all remember them. They remember all these timelines, which I think was a beautiful thing that DC was like, we're just going to make it all matter. Like, it may not make sense, and it doesn't have to make sense. We're going to be okay with
that. Let it be fun.
Right.
Look. We'll talk about your stuff and my stuff for the rest of the conversation. But I think what I want to say here is like,
I love comics.
No, we're having fun. That's cool. But what I think is, so I'm a big novel guy. So one of my favorite lines from the Dark Towers saga. It's in the fourth book, Wizard in Glass. Eddie is taking on a psycho train, an artificial intelligence in a train in a riddling contest, and he figured out something very wonderful. And I love this. The word good is always up for grabs. Good is relative to everybody that is listening to this, watching this, however they get this content.
Sure.
Right? Good is relative. So if good is relative and you're not sure what you're doing is good, make it fun. What's fun for you? Like, learn from Eric Larson.
Right.
I'm going to tell the story that I give a damn about, and I'm going to put it out with all my heart and soul, and I'm not going to worry about it because this is the story I want to tell. And somewhere down the road, I think, again, I truly do think this, Larson is underrated. And I think down the road, people are going to look at what he's done as a genius. Because again, I think the art that stands the test of time is the stuff that's true to the person telling it.
Sure.
That is Eric Larson's baby. Savage Dragon is Eric Larson's magnum opus. I think that's the.
And I think if you looked at it as a whole, and I haven't read it as a whole, but I think because he's rebooted it, kind of revamped it, kind of retold it, just like any Marvel or just like any Spider-Man or DC, I think that you can learn something from a Savage Dragon as a comic writer. You could learn something by reading all of Savage Dragon and watching one person do all those revamps and what that looks like. Like he could tell, this is going to get stale for my readers. What do I need to do to shake things up to do that? Versus an artificial Marvel or DC corporate going, all right, we need to get Dr. Octopus as Spider-Man, so we got to kill off Spider-Man. Let's make this happen. Not saying that Superior Spider-Man wasn't a friggin' amazing run, one of the best runs forever, but it took me a minute to embrace it because it was Doc Ock as Spider-Man, right?
It's still it's much like, okay, so the X-Men Feelings Thor and Doc Ock and Spider-Man. It's very much from a meta perspective, not from the actual book, but from a meta perspective, they were truly Spider-Man books. Superior Spider-Man is a Spider-Man book.
Yeah.
It oddly is a redemption of Otto Octavius. It is the redemption of him. He wins. He kills his enemy. He has taken over. Now what?
Right. Well, and watching him, how he would handle Spider-Man, like Peter Parker, you were capable of doing all these things and you limit yourself. What does that look like? Because Peter, you can't make Peter do those things or it feels artificial. My favorite profession for Peter Parker was when JMS made him a teacher. Like that makes complete sense to me.
Totally. It fits him. Like that's why I say he'd be a great dad. Like that's totally why. It's the same reason. It's the exact same reason. And because he is great. He is a great teacher because not only of his own, he has a lot of empathy for his students. He does. So that empathy makes him a really, really endearing character. And the thing about Superior, Doc Octopus, when he started, had very little empathy.
Right.
And over time, you're right. There were some things he did that were better than what Peter did. Especially initially, some of the ideas were great. Yeah. But then you started to understand why Peter did things the way he did. And he was like, after a while, he realized, he's not wrong. Now, some things he still disagreed with because he's not the same guy, but he understood. Also, now that they've had that experience together, they don't look at each other quite the same way anymore. Right? That's great. That's a great story and a very interesting one and very meta. Thor, worthiness. Okay? Many ways, Jane was braver than Thor was.
Yeah.
I actually think the biggest misnomer, I think the biggest thing I wish Aaron had done in that run was shown her struggles with cancer more in the book. Like, I had to take a little bit more of that human element to it because I don't think it was stressed enough just what she was overcoming. And that's just my opinion.
Sure.
But at the same time, okay, this was killing her.
Right. And
yet, she did it anyway. And braver than, Odin's son was nowhere near as brave as she was. And worthiness, like what that actually is.
Right.
Honestly, I guess it's who you are when things are hard. And I think, and the thing is, you look at the original concept of Thor, when Odin trapped him in a crippled man.
Right.
Very meta. Same thing. On a meta level, what Jason Aaron did is he took concept of Thor, the old school Thor, trapping someone inside a human. The human now has the power of Thor. Right? That's what he did. He inverted it. Thor learning humility in a cripple. No, someone with humility now can suddenly change the world, but at a great price. Saying it's the opposite side of the coin, and but it's the same coin, and I think that's what a legacy character should do is, they should be able to. What is your story idea, and can you make a character that comes to take the place of the old one fit that story you're telling? That's why Doctor Who works so well, like straight up, right? They never deviate from the actual story, but every time they tell the story, it's a little different because each Doctor is different.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think you got some great stories with Thor, with somebody else being the worthy one. I think that affected him, and I don't ever foresee Jane Foster losing her status in the Marvel Universe. I think she's earned it, and that is really hard to do. I mean, look at what they do to Batgirl. Like, she's back as Oracle right now. Yeah, she was just Batgirl in an issue of Nightwing, but I think primarily in the Batgirl's book, she's going to be Oracle. It's hard to put these things back in a box once you've elevated them to a certain status, and I think that they've done that, and I think it's powerful, and I think it's a great thing of storytelling, and great for Thor. Thor needed a human that we cared about to be on his level, right? Because he comes down here, he always deals with God problems, but he never really had, like, we tried it with Eric Masterson, Thunderstrike. That didn't stick because we just met Eric and he became Thunderstrike and he was important for a little bit. And the next writer was like, I don't care about that. Let's go back. Where Jane has been there, a staple from the beginning, and can call him on his shit. And then I don't know if you read Donnie Cates' run of Thor, what he did with Donald Blake, like, amazing idea.
So I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Donnie Cates I discovered far later than most people did.
That is a damn shame.
You don't hit everybody. There are people you just miss. So I've been going more into the indie comics route, and I've been going a little less in the mainstream route. And I'm looking at Donnie is right now arguably the best thing going. I was told so. My favorite, like up until like really, really, really recently, I was a big fan of Immortal Hulk. I loved the
Alan Ewing's Immortal Hulk, yeah.
Yeah. Al Ewing is. I read his stuff back when he was doing Jennifer Blood and Dynamite. Yeah. Like, that guy's good. Like, I knew he was going to be good wherever they did, and he took Hulk and made him like the. So basically, this was my choice. And at the time, I didn't know. I knew Al Ewing more than I knew Donnie Cates because I had read him prior. So it's like Immortal Hulk, or Venom.
Right. Sure.
I don't think I lost, but at the same time, I didn't get everything either. Right. And
Alan Ewing's Guardians run is way better than Donnie Cates. So I mean,
well, Al is actually a really good writer. Like, he's very much in the vein of Garth Ennis.
Yeah.
That Ennis, everybody thinks of Ennis as more extreme stuff, but actually, what he does really well, I think Garth Ennis does really well, is he does war stories phenomenally. I loved his Johnny Red. That was really good. And it actually made me, it's like one of my current novel projects. If I had not read Johnny Red, I never would have found what I found. It was like, oh shit, this is good. But like, Garth's a romantic. That's the thing about Garth Ennis I don't think a lot of people realize is he's a romantic. And he's extreme. I mean, he's got like there's a certain pragmatism to his writing, but there's kind of like a pure romance in his writing. I think is really, really neat. I'm sure if he heard this, he'd probably be like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" But that's just how I see him, right? I met Garth. He's a cool dude. But the thing is, that's who he is. He's very much like Al Ewing comes from that same vein. He's a little less romantic than Garth is, actually. He's a little bit more pragmatic, down to earth, but he's got that than Garth is. But he does incredibly good story beats. Whatever he's done, like, his stuff's solid. Shit makes sense. right? And you get a sense of that character, all right? I love that. Basically, he EC comic Hulk, and I thought that was damn cool.
Yeah, I consider Alan Ewing a cross between Warren Ellis, like early Warren Ellis, Transmet Relevant Warren Ellis, and Cullen Bunn. Because Cullen Bunn, it has this amazing ability to go, you love this character, and I'm going to remind you why. Like, and I think he did that with Immortal Hulk, even though it's such a crazy story going, you love Bruce Banner because of this. You love the Hulk because of this. And I'm going to just separate him. And I know you've seen them separated before, but hear me out. and that's the little Warren Ellis, Grant Morrison thing you're talking about. I'm going to play with these guys, even though you've seen this done a whole bunch of times. But I'm going to play with it in a way you've never thought of. Isn't that nice?
Oh, I still remember the issue I reviewed through my column. Like the part, like he had a had Hulk in pieces.
Right.
Right. This is the one that I never thought I'd feel sorry for this guy. I never thought that, but guy was a dick. Told the Hulk what he was going to do with him, how he was going to do with it, and then the Hulk's right there, just watching, waiting, doing all this stuff in pieces.
Right.
And then he reforms and literally swallows the guy inside him, and you're just like, the way he died. You were like, I wanted him to get his comeuppance. Now I feel bad because I did not want that. Like that was brutal, but it was incredibly well done. Book did lose a little momentum as time went on, but it was still a fantastic run. But I missed Venom. Yeah. So I read Donnie Cates' Silver Surfer because Silver Surfer is my gateway to the Marvel Universe.
Okay. Well, if you like Doctor Who, that makes sense. He's kind of like Doctor Who.
Yes, and also that very underrated Silver Surfer run. I can't remember the guy's name that wrote it. Oh man, the Dodsons drew it. I can't remember who wrote it.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think that was Dan Slott's run, wasn't it?
What? Yeah, Dan Slott. Yeah, it was great. It was a neat gem of a run. It was beautiful. It was awesome. And that was Doctor Who. That literally was a Doctor Who.
Oh, yeah. I mean, self-admitted in interviews. He self-admitted, like, this is me writing Doctor Who with Silver Surfer.
Yeah, but having fun with it. Like, he still he was very true to the Surfer. Like, the last issue actually made me cry. It was beautiful. It was really, really well done. Like, I'm not always a fan of Dan Slott, but I love that run. That run is really, really, really good. And then that's how I read Donnie. Then I read Donnie Cates' run, which is a throwback to Stan Lee. Like, it's very much a throwback to Stan Lee's run with him. And then it was like, okay, Donnie's good. Then I read Crossover by Donnie Cates, and it's like, this dude's a huge comic fan. And now I feel like I've missed out on all this stuff, and I'm like, ugh, right? But it is what it is. I'm actually friends with his wife.
Oh, really? Yeah, with Megan Hutchinson.
She's been on the show a few times. So yeah.
I love Donnie Cates. I think he's the best writer in modern times because I think one of the things that I think he gets better than everybody else is he loves comics. He knows what continuity is important, but he also knows that comics need to be fun. Yep. Because we've got all these great writers, and they're all victim of it. Hickman, Morrison, like at some point they just want to prove that they're really smart and they understand these characters on a level you don't. And that's great for us, like you and me, who've read a lot of comics. That's great, but it's not always fun. You know what I'm saying? It's not always fun. Alan Ewing Hulk, not a fun run.
No,
great run, not fun.
Yeah, no. Alan Ewing's run is not supposed to be a fun run.
Right.
The story it is very much like, no, this is a cool story. You're gonna love the ride I take you on. But no, like if you're looking for like cotton candy, this is not your ride. Go somewhere else. This is for right. No, Cates has a good sense of fun to him. I would argue though, like the guy I'm a really big fan of is Tom Taylor. I think that guy's a really, really great writer, and he also has an incredible sense of fun. He can do serious stuff, but I think he does. Tom Taylor is like a modern, like kind of reminds me of Dan Jurgens in the sense that Dan never got the writing respect he deserved. I think a little bit because his stuff was solid. Never. You never read a Jan Jurgens story outside of maybe the death of Superman that made you like really resonate. Holy crap, that got me right here.
Right.
But his stuff was always good, always good. Like he never I felt phoned it in. I feel like Taylor's like the next level of that. Whereas he will occasionally make you feel stuff, but he just month in, month out, he delivers.
I mean, well, look at what he did. He saved Nightwing without trying.
Yeah.
Like Nightwing he just gets it, right? He got what made Chuck Dixon's run work. He got what, made all these runs work and what makes Nightwing tick and made it beautiful and made it and he gets what fans want, like the little Alfred stuff and like hanging out with Tim instead of Damian. Like just those little things that just make sense to us who love Dick Grayson. Yeah, so I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's like, so in my opinion, Tom Taylor is my favorite. But there's also the other guy I would consider in that vein, James Tynion IV.
Sure, yeah. He's hot, right? See, I struggle with him. I love everything he's writing now, but I know I didn't love him when he was co-writing with Scott Snyder. So it's weird. So I'm trying to figure out who is James Tynion,
Read his stuff on his own. All his stuff on his own is really good.
Yeah, all his stuff on his own has been great. I loved his Batman run. I love Nice House on the Lake. I love all of it,
Do you know I know my favorite run of his, and this is probably going to stun some people? Batman Ninja Turtles. It's a crossover, but it's how crossovers should be. They're just stupid fun.
I love that run. I mean, I'm a huge Ninja Turtles fan. I'm from where the Ninja Turtles are from. So I'm from Rochester, New Hampshire, which is right next to Dover. Growing up, I grew up with Kevin Eastman and Peter Lard, like down the street. Like they did comic shows and I could see them and meet them. And I'm at the age where Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was popular. In fact, right before this, I was watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with my son, putting him to bed. Huge.
It's the other book I'm reading right now. Like I'm a big fan. Like I think Sophie Campbell's doing a really good job with the current run. It's different than what was Tom Waltz's run. You needed to. Waltz had been there for 100
years. Yeah, but you and I are going to hardly disagree, and I can tell you why I hate this run.
Yeah, okay.
You have Tokar and Razor and Bebop and Rocksteady for the first time in history in the same book, about to cross paths, and they do a fucking battle of the bands. Fuck you, Sophie Campbell. Like, I want to see them throw down. My little 12-year-old mind needs them to throw down.
Do you know what I actually want to see them do? This is what I want to see them do. I actually have a better idea than even that. Hear me out.
I don't know.
Bebop, Rocksteady, Tokar, Razor, Road Trip, Nick Patera draws it.
Well, I actually
don't lie to me. UBN.
Well, they've done such a great job of adding slow turtles to the Turtles universe now. I really want to see the counter turtles, right? You get Slash, you get the Mecha Turtle, you've got
they did Slash. I thought they did Slash.
They did Slash, but I want to see a 4 or 5 versus 5. I want to see a team, an alternate team, just like any 90s comic. I want to see the replacement turtles, and they're all turtles that we know and love because you have enough now with this new time travel one and like Slash and.
Oh no, you could do it. I just like I said, going back to the initial thing. Tom Waltz did a fantastic job for 100 issues.
Yeah.
Like he also needed to lead the book. He just needed to. Like he was there for like 9 years.
Sure.
Like that's a long time to tell that, and he deserved a different perspective. And I especially think the first 6 issues of Sophie's run is fantastic.
Yeah.
You're right. The Battle of the Bands thing, I wasn't crazy about it, but again, it's like, you know what? She's trying something different. And I'm again, her stories aren't bad. They're quieter. I think that's the thing about them. They're quieter. She's slowly bringing them back into the rest of the universe now, which makes sense. I mean, issue 100 was a bang, man. That also was a very nice finale and a sad one too.
Well, and you've got to give Sophie credit because he had a template. he had the Malibu run 1 through 50 that was the template for those first 100 issues. Yes, they deviated periodically, but City of War is where Malibu ended, and it's where, he left the book, So Sophie has zero stuff, but I would love to like see Sophie like jump over to Marvel and do like a Runaways. Like I think she would like
actually the book I really want her to do on Marvel. Honestly, I want to see her do Unbeatable Squirrel Girl.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I want to see her do that. Honestly, little quick Marvel aside, why did Marvel cancel that book? Yeah, because okay, yes, comic shops doesn't do that great, but the graphic novels and Scholastic loved that book. It sold better than anything else they had.
Right, exactly.
So why the hell would you drop that book? Right? Kids, read that book. The only other book you have that Marvel has that you could give to kids is Miss Marvel.
Right.
That's it. And you can't. I would say Miss Marvel's for slightly older. Like Squirrel Girl can just be this fun little. It doesn't have to change. Right. Just put creator like. I mean, my dream creative team for that. I want to see Colette Turner. If Colette Turner ever goes to Marvel, that's the book I want to see her do. But I think Sophie would be phenomenal on it. I think she'd be great. That would be the Marvel book I'd want her to see. I think Runaways would be interesting, but or put her on an X book, not the big one, but a X book would be good with her too.
Yeah, I think she'd be good at any of the teenage stuff. Put her on Champions, put her on like a Jet X New Mutants or whatever it is this time. I think it's New X-Men or whatever. Any of those things, even on the DC, put her on a Young Justice. That Young Justice run by Bendis was really good. I just think Bendis was doing so much damage other places that it affected people's excitement about that run.
Yeah.
I'm not a Legion fan, but I know that he messed up Legion completely.
So Riley Ross was a friend of mine, so I got the Legion books that he did because they hurt to read.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
They hurt to read. They were pretty to look at, but they hurt to read. Right. So, because, like I said, when Bendis is really on, great writer, great character. Right. But I also think the Legion's one of the toughest books to do. And the reason why.
Absolutely.
Because it's got such a diverse cast. I think the only way to do the Legion truly justice is I think each year you make a decision on the characters that are going to be in each quote unquote season, and you rotate. All right, occasionally bringing everybody together for like a big issue like issue 50, assuming it goes to an issue 50, or maybe it's at the end of the year. But you make the books very, very tight with a very, very tight cast. Because I remember Mark Waid and Barry Kitson's run. First year was fantastic, but Waid got lost in the second year. You could just tell. There was a point. It's like I don't know what to do right now. Right?
There's a huge difference between writing a team book of 6 characters and then writing a universe book, which is what Legion is, right?
Yeah,
Legion's like Star Trek. You're writing all the characters of Star Trek or Babylon 5. Like you keep up. Game of Thrones. Like Legion has all that stuff, and it's complicated. I wouldn't try.
There are a handful of writers that can do that well, but yeah, that's the book that I look at and go, I'm not sure I know what I'm doing here.
I'm going to need an adult here, please. Thank you.
And then they go, but Josh, you are the adult. Oh, fuck.
Yeah, no, I would quit before I started. Yeah, hard pass.
Well, no, screw it. I try. I did the best damn thing I could, and I tell you what, 2.5 issues that were actually good, I'd be proud. I would be proud. I would be very proud. And then it would just go right off the rails.
That's those solo issues in between an arc of a team book, right? You got that big arc, and then you got that one solo issue, big arc. Those solo issues would be your 2 good ones.
That's it. That's all I want. Because that is such a that is such a very, very big, convoluted universe. You'd have to have a very clear idea where you're going with these characters. I think the best thing they did with Legion was like back when I was like in my 20s was Legion Lost. Like that was the best I think Legion book of the last 20 years, maybe. I can't think of anything else that tried something so bold. Again, they cut the cast in half.
Right.
Right, they cut the cast in half because it was such a big idea, and they were so far lost they had no way to go home. And it was like, oh my god, like that was such a big undertaking. But I get it. Amnat and Lanning, when they were still writing together, said, nope, we're not bringing the whole Legion in on this, because if we bring the whole Legion in on this, I don't think we can do it. Right.
Right. Well, and if you compare it to like Guardians of the Galaxy, like the original Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy and Marvel was just like, all right, we find these old relics from Marvel. They never got what Legion was, right? Legion was, we have these really cool characters, and then sometimes we throw in something for the past just for fun, versus Guardians of the Galaxy, that was every issue. Here, we found the Shield. Look, we found Cosmic Ghost Rider. Look, we found this version of Hulk. Look, we found Spider-Man relics.
Well, no, that's it, right? Like, whereas Legion was like the cool thing about Legion was when like Crisis messed up Legion. The original Crisis messed them up because they took Superboy out of Legion. Superboy needed to be in that Legion. He really, really did. And taking him away just was like, whoa, like, no, that's not. You wrecked a very, very big part of the heart and soul of that book. They've tried different things. Some of them have been good. Some of them have been bad since. I think again, if you look back, like, but the Legion as a concept is cool. It's a future of tomorrow's heroes today. Like, we're reading about their adventures in the 30th century, using heroes from the past as inspiration for these new and wonderful worlds. Right. You know, like that's a lot of stuff you can play with. Too much for
and when it works well, especially when you see something that's going on in like the current issue of Batman and how it's affecting Legion. Like, oh, that event affected this 30,000 years ago because it's so big. You know, if you do it right, it can really be awesome in this beautiful, beautiful piece of art. But most of the time, it's not. Doesn't work.
Right? Yeah, like you know, it's just the way it is. But okay, so I'm gonna ask probably the first actual question of the entire.
Sure, yeah. It's we're an hour and a half in. That's fine. Let's go.
Yeah, totally. Let's go. Right. What was the book that made you want to do comics? And there'd be an issue that made you say, "I can do this."
So I don't know if I have a set book. You know, I started reading. You remember those magazines? I don't know. Actually, you're from Canada, so maybe you don't know. In the U.S., we had these magazine subscriptions. Like, you'd bring them home, and your parents would get them, and then they'd order a magazine, and the school would get money.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, you guys had those. So my grandmother ordered me Spider-Man, and like from that day on, I've read Spider-Man literally since I was 12. Like, every issue of Amazing Spider-Man I own. I own them all, and I kept reading them. I think when I realized that comics could have like a voice and a presence was probably reading. Trying to think of probably like the best example of it. You know, the quick ones would be like God, God hates, man kills. You know, God loves, man kills, from Claremont. But I think it was actually some of the independent stuff. I really resonated with the Jinx and Goldfish, the crime stuff, because that was stuff that I wanted to tell. I resonated really well with Grant Morrison's Preacher. Like, the early stuff, you know, I agree with you. He's definitely a lover. When he's not trying to just shock you, he tells beautiful, beautiful, whimsical stories, you know, that are really touching. Like the concept of I need to tell God what to do, even though I'm a piece of crap. Like, I get that, right? Like, I get,
yeah, we all have those moments. Like,
right? I get
right?
that
We all
I
have those
am
moments.
not the guy, but I have an issue with that dude. And I'm going to do whatever I can to tell that dude that I'm hurt, even though I have no right to tell you I'm hurt because I've done some shitty things. Like, that's deep, right? That's deep. And then you read, like, Why the Last Man? And you know, you get Brian K. Vaughan, and you get this guy who's the last man. And you always thought about it as a child, like, what would that look like? And then it doesn't look like, but it's actually more realistic of what you would do, right? He mansplains so many times in that issue to a bunch of women, like, you're not in charge anymore, and you don't get it. Like, and I think it's funny and it's beautiful, and it's very me, right? Like, my luck would be like, oh, I'm doing this amazing thing, and the last man, oh, it's because I'm a dirty human and I have monkey poop, and that's why I get to live. Like that is just, I can relate to that. I can get that, you know. So those are kind of my early inspirations. You know, I wanted to be a filmmaker first, so I was into Kevin Smith, Quentin Tarantino, like those stories. Robert Rodriguez, Kevin Williamson. Like, I was a huge Scream and Dawson's Creek fan. Like, I went both ways.
Okay, fine.
You know, I'm also a musical guy. So Jonathan Larson's Rent. Like, I literally defined every aspect of how I view people and love in relationships, right? Living each moment the fullest and loving everyone as much as you can, because you never know when it's not, and trying to be as inclusive as you can, but being honest and vulnerable at the same time. Because I think that we forget that we want to be exclusive and all that, but we don't want to be vulnerable. Like, hey, I'm not okay with such and such. It's okay to have that conversation. And I think we forget that a lot of times as we try to be sensitive. Like, it's okay to be vulnerable as long as your heart is pure. The problem is that people who want to have those vulnerable conversations tend to not have a pure heart, right? It's to get in conflict.
Oddly enough, I think that's the only thing I'm going to have to push back on you on that a little bit, just based
Sure,
on my
sure.
experience with this podcast. Like, I've had the pleasure of talking to amazing creatives.
Yeah.
Some, you know, and honestly, I think the cool thing about it for me is I don't really have a dog in the game politically. I just treat everybody as who they are.
Sure.
I've agreed with, I've disagreed with. I think most of us just want to be understood.
Right.
And I honestly think for the most of us, that's what we want. I think what tends to happen is somewhere in the last 20 years, the idea of listening disappeared.
Sure.
All right. And I don't know why, because when you do listen to everybody, even the people I most disagree with, I can understand at least somewhat of where they're coming from.
Right.
I understand that, like, they want to be heard. They don't necessarily want to matter, but they want to know that someone is on the other end of whatever that dialogue is. You care. Now, you're right. Some people are just stirring the pot. Some people are dicks. Like, they just don't want to listen. It's all about them. This is true. Won't deny that. But I think by and large, giving people a chance to speak, to be understood, I think even when I don't agree with someone, I do learn a lot about them and respect them. You know what I mean?
No, I think we completely agree. I think I may have you may have misinterpreted what I meant. Like, there is people, the people who you vocally hear, who are disagreeing with people, aren't trying to listen. They're trying to start wars, right? That, like, in the Zeitgeist of the world. You know, when you deal with a lot of creatives, it's really hard, right? Because when we disagree, there's something in the back of our little ego minds or our creative minds that are saying, you're saying that I'm not good enough to do whatever, right? And that's never what you're saying most of the time, you know, but that's what we feel because we're just trying to create. And there's a vulnerable part of creating, like, to really, really create.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the hardest things about, like, this is me at the beginning of my creative career and now, I ask myself when I do any kind of story, what do I give a shit about?
Sure.
Because if I don't, it's not going to resonate. It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter how awesome it looks, how pretty it is, right?
No, well, and I say that to rookie writers all the time, and they're like, I just want to have fun and write something fun. I don't want to be political or this. I was like, I you don't have to be political, but you have to have something to say. Like there's got to be something. There's got to be a deeper thing to what you're trying to say. Like my book broke down to 4 Dead Bodies. It's kind of a Quentin Tarantino ripoff. Lots of guns, lots of violence, lots of F words, but it's really talking about dealing with this guy is hurt and he loves this person so much and he's doing everything in his world to consume focused that he doesn't see the bigger picture around him, and it gets him in these deeper things, like most crime fiction, right? Like they're driven, like the hard grind detective. I was hurt once, so I have to do it this. It's a stereotype. It's a character arc, but there's got to be a deeper moment, or it doesn't make sense. I remember when someone read my last issue of that, like, oh, this is a love story. Yes, all things are love stories. That's what all of my stuff will be love, because that's the best thing in the world is love.
Yeah. It's also the hardest thing in the world.
Right, sure, yeah. It's all stories come from love, one way or the other.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I just, like in terms, like the last, especially 2 years, right? I don't really care what side of the fence you stand on.
Right.
It's the most vocal people that have driven me nuts, because again, they're coming from places of fear, and you can see it.
Sure.
And I empathize to a point, but there's also another point where it's just like, you know what? You gotta let people make their own decisions, whatever that is, and live with it, and shrug, and move on. Because really, at the end of the day, dude, we might disagree with the color of the sky. We might. Like, I don't know, right? I can't control that. Here's what I can. But here's what I can.
I assume you could see it better in Canada than you can in America. So I mean, you're probably right.
Well, it's my perspective, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's like, you know what? It's like, let's agree to disagree. Okay, want a beer or whatever beverage you prefer? Sure.
I prefer beer, so
yeah. That would be it, right? And that would be the end of it.
Right.
That listening, that exchanging. Some of my best conversations have been things I've disagreed about. I did a paper that unfortunately did not get published at the very end, but I had a couple friends look at it. One of them, man, me and her like literally went at it for 2 hours on just different aspects. She told me some things. I got so much from the disagreements.
Sure.
Because I just saw things that I didn't see before. You know what I mean? And I think that's my sincere wish for the next 4 or 5 years. I think it's going to be a tumultuous time. No matter what we choose to do, where we go, it's going to be a tumultuous time. My sincere hope, though, for everybody, no matter who you are, where you're going, though, is you're open enough to listen.
Sure.
Because if you can do that, you can get along with anybody.
No, I agree.
Yeah. So you're doing crime books. Yeah, we're gonna do like I have not looked at your catalog yet. I'm gonna be picking something tonight because I got a review column. I'm like, you know what? Doing an independent book is always a fun thing to do.
Yeah. The books that I've been known for is Broke Down as a crime book. So it's about 2 guys break down on the side of the road. Lots of guns, lots of violence, lots of F words. They hate each other. They're trying to kill each other most of the time. And everyone's out to get him, from the mafia to a biker gang to a Mexican drug cartel to, of course, the police. And they hate each other, and they have 4 dead bodies in the trunk, and they have to deal with that situation. Have you ever read Stray Bullets?
I have read a bit of it, yes.
It's literally inspired by the end of the first issue, because you remember the slightly mentally handicapped guy murders a whole bunch of people, leaves them in the car, and then walks away. Like, I was like, wouldn't that be interesting to have gangsters break down on the side of the road? What would that look like? What would that inspire? So it's written in kind of that vein.
And also just dealing with somebody you absolutely can't stand, you have no choice. Because kill him,
right?
You're on your own, and you're fucked. And everybody's after you, so you can't leave each other.
Right, you need each other to do that, yeah.
Yeah, you need each other to get out of it. So at some point, hopefully the hatred breaks, or you eventually kill each other, because you're going to at some point. But it's that's a really cool concept. I think that's fun. And there's a lot you can do. Like, how did they get here? Where are
Right.
they going? What's their plan? Other than not die.
Yeah, it's a super interesting book. I think you'll really dig because the first issue is literally designed to make you feel like I'm a rookie writer. Like it's designed to go, this is a Quentin Tarantino ripoff. Yes, sure. Keep. Are you comfortable yet? And then I blow back the layers and go, oh, you just kind of made us feel familiar. Like, and then you've gone on this direction. It was done on purpose because I have a lot of film background, so I do know how to write a story and to suck you in and like give you something familiar, and then let's grow from there and tell story my way.
Yeah, well, it's all about storytelling. It's about expectations.
Right.
You have to give them just enough of what they expect before you pull the rug from under them.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you can tell a story logically what they expected their conclusion to. That's okay too, provided there's a little bit of nuance that makes it different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the second book that I'm known for is called Voodoo Nations. So Voodoo Nations is about two missionaries that go to Brazil after a big flood that floods the area, and they kind of invade on a voodoo priest territory. And they're trying to do their thing, and the voodoo priest is trying to do their thing. And they go to heads, and they go to that, and this voodoo priest messes up their marriage, messes up everything, which sends them into a spiral of their faith and what that looks like. So they have to travel to New Orleans and trying to fix their marriage, and kind of messes everything up. But it's like I said, I write everything with a passion. Like behind the scenes is when my mom died. I broke. There was something about me that broke that was not fixable. Like I couldn't fix it. I couldn't go back to the way I was. I changed. And watching my wife try to navigate through that to decide if she loves this new version of me, because I couldn't go back.
No.
And that's what it's about on the deeper meaning. I just added voodoo and spellcraft and all the cool stuff, but it's a beautiful story in there.
But it made you more mortal, though, didn't it?
What's up?
It made you more mortal.
Oh yeah, it did. It did a lot of things to me. My mom died around Thanksgiving, so I still feel it at this stuff, and it was sudden. It was a sudden death. It's weird, but it actually accepted. It made me realize that have more sympathy for those who broke. Right. We talk about my background. We talked about a little earlier where I come from a drug and alcohol family. Well, I avoided all that stuff like the plague to never fall down that rabbit hole. So one of the parts of that story that I didn't tell is my mom went into AA at like 14. So she was clean for a real long time. Of that, my dad still used, but my mom was clean for a long of that time. The first thing I did when my mom died was drink heavily. Totally disrespectful to my mom. Like I can mentally feel it, but I'm nursing my pain. And like me trying to reconcile that. Like I don't want to dishonor my mom, but every action I'm doing is dishonoring my mom. And just getting into that mindset was just so unique when you literally lose control for a little bit. You just flow on instinct and you aren't you until you can figure it out and piece of pieces enough and accept the brokenness to heal a little bit.
Yeah, we won't dwell on this too long. I just wanted to was thinking about, like, we all have points. We all do. We all have chinks in our armor. Sometimes we don't realize what those chinks in the armor really are. And when you take something that you feel is like a solid foundation, I feel like your mom was a big foundation in your life. Or just even when especially when she tried to improve her life, it's kind of heroic. And then one day, gone. And mourning that. And in mourning that, you weren't sure how. Probably for the first little bit there, like it hit you in a way you didn't expect, and then you fell, but you didn't stay down. You got back up. But yeah, I mean, I think when people grieve, I tend to, again, I don't want them necessarily to go down a self-destructive path when they grieve, but I understand it too.
Yeah,
because you're trying to come to terms. You're going to have to face this pain, but sometimes you're just not ready in that moment. And I think there's a grace. We all get to some degree a little bit of that grace period of he's going to be down for a while. Like, I think the universe just says that, like, he's going to be down, and there's going to come a point where the universe is like, okay, you've grieved enough, get your ass up. But there is a moment, like, we all can fall, and we all have those things. And yeah, I'm just bringing all this up because it's like that's a very empathy is a very big thing in art, and understanding people and understanding maybe even understanding a part of yourself and part of your past that you didn't understand before. It humbles you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a Christian, and like what that does to my faith, right? What that looks like as a faith-based, because it's easy to be faithful when there's nothing bad going on. It's hard when it is. Like, what does that look like? And that's why what I do in Voodoo Nations kind of explore what that looks like, losing your faith a little bit. And what does that look like? Where do you go? Like, you literally read this book. I don't care what religion you are. You read a book that's teaching you that you need to go to them or to yourself, depending on the book. There's secrets to these answers when you're grieving. Like, this is where you're supposed to go. This is the answer. And the first thing you do is, that doesn't work for me. F that. Everyone does it. And it's so crazy. Like, there's just a human condition that says that's fake. Like, at first, it doesn't mean it won't change over time, but like your first instinct is like, no.
Because all you can see is the pain.
Right.
There is a point in my life where I with my own Christian like kind of background as well. There was a point in my life where I felt like I was abandoned and alone. Right. It wasn't true, but it's what I felt.
Right.
And one of the hardest things I had, like looking back, I realized how many people had my back that I took for granted.
Sure.
Right. And as a result, it's just like a part of me is like, well, why couldn't I see it? And then I was just in such a hurt place.
Right.
Right. That I just could not see it. And until I got older and it was past me enough I could look back on it a little bit more, a little less being so close to it, a little bit more distance. I was like, okay. Now, it taught me a lot of how I do business, a lot of how I approach people comes from that time in my life. But it's very, very much a thing of, those hard times, that's when you learn who you truly are. And sometimes you don't like what that looks like too.
Yeah, one of the things I was listening to some lyrics in the song, and I can't remember the lyrics, but they said something that really resonated to me. And he talked about he was going through a breakup, and that he's okay with going through the breakup because all his friends rally behind him, and he knows that they really have his back. And I realized that there's a truth to that in me. Like, when I go through a breakup, I hit hard, and I think I hit it hard. Not that I don't feel it, but I think I hit it harder because that's the first time. Because I never feel like I'm enough for anybody. I never feel like I'm gonna do enough. That's my brokenness. Like, that's my core brokenness, and it comes from being neglected as a child and all that stuff. Whatever. That's the core brokenness that I struggle with. So that's why, like, I overcompensate. Like, I give to everybody. I'm always creating anthologies and like, be included, please, because I know what it's like to not be included. So when I break down, when I break heavily, like, I go hard because people rally behind me, and it goes, okay, they do have my back, and I feel safe for that short amount of time. It's that, like, reality that could be a drug to somebody. Like, that could be an addiction to somebody, that brokenness. So they continue to put themselves in these bad situations so they can have these people rally behind them. And then eventually those people don't rally behind them because they're like, you got to take responsibility for your action. That tragedy and seeing that human nature is both beautiful and so destructive at the same time.
I have first-hand experience of it. Like my own upbringing, I've seen it. Like, there's some. My mom is someone that's had a condition in her life, and she'd argue, I'm sure, with me about how serious and not serious with it is. Sure. There's are things of her life that she's never taken responsibility for either.
Sure.
And looking back, some of it I understand, some of it I don't. and that's her thing to bear. But the thing is, one of the things that's easy when you're in a place to stay there. The hardest thing to do is to go forward. And we all like something I mentioned at the very beginning about looking at, like, being honest with who you are, but also looking at the things that make you uncomfortable, the things that make you afraid, the things that, right? Those are the ways out of all these things.
Sure.
And that's hard. That means being vulnerable in a place where you can't run or hide.
Yeah.
And that's why when things are really tough, you learn who you really are.
Right.
Sometimes you'll be shocked at what you find. Like, you'll find things about yourself that I think I know I did, that I was shocked that I could be that kind of villain. Right? I wasn't the hero in my story. I was the villain, and I understood that. Right? But then there are other parts. It's like, you know what? I did the best I could in that time, what I knew how. Right? Sure. Right? So it's those moments are very powerful teaching moments. And if you let yourself learn, you can grow. But one of the biggest traps we all fall into is we can very easily stay there. And I think we all stay in our spots to some. We all there's some things we will never change, but it's what you're aware of, it's what you can handle, and how you move forward. And I think sounds like with you've created a wonderful community around you, right? Sure. And that's really cool. But also, I mean, again, I don't know you that well, and maybe if I'm overstepping, call me on it. But it sounds like you're harder on yourself than you should be. And I think,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think our hardest judges are ourselves.
Right. Yeah. No. For me, I believe in impact. Right. I believe that a lot of people do things in this world, but they don't want to make an impact. And I think that we've been taught that we're just dust in the wind. What you do doesn't matter, but it does. Everything matters. And I'm super hard on myself on all aspects of that, from creation of comics to like the way I treat my stepdaughter or my son. Like, all of those things matter, and watching those, and it's really hard, especially as I've grown up. I had a 19-year-old, so when she turned 18 and left, we had a confrontation, where she was making her own choices, and I didn't always agree with all those choices, but knowing that I did what was right and raised her the best way I knew how. And the end result is going to be her coming back and us unifying because I'm a good dad. Right? That's a hard reality to accept when she's telling you you're not. And then, at 19 came and she lived some life, and she was like, Dad, I was really hard on you. Like, I need to get that. And I was like, whew, I was right. You're right. But, these things are hard. And I'm very self-aware. Like when my mom died, like, I was so broken. Josh, I was really broken. Like, they were like, you should probably see some psychologists. I was like, you don't know. I'm so broken, and I've been in psychology my whole life. If I spew all my life story, because right now, all of my hurt is on the surface. And if I explain that to a counselor, you're not going to see the same Travis. I'm going to be on medication. I'm going to be on all these things. But a lot of those things on the surface, I've healed from. I just forgot because I'm hurting. And your hurt reminds you that you haven't healed from, like makes you think that you haven't healed from those things, right? Because all those things, every time you make a mistake, all those things come back. That's what anger comes from, I think, and depression.
Well, I have a theory about depression. That I don't know if we have enough time in this podcast to do. What I will say is, yeah, you definitely are a bit hard on yourself. But going back to what I said earlier, like the nature of love, like the real nature of love is it's hard. There are people I love in my life, like I really love that, and I'm sure they feel the same way about me too. Like I make kind of decisions based off of just a feeling in my gut more than anything else to go back to Alberta, because something told me I could do the most good here, not because it was familiar, not because it was safe, but because I could do the most good.
Right.
Something inside me just said, "You're going to do what you need to do here." Okay, whatever that is. Now, I could have stayed where I was. I was fine there. That wouldn't have been bad at all. but there's a there's those listening to your gut. So, but when not everybody's going to agree or disagree, but do you love me? And the hard thing about that is love's not control. It's not when people are doing what you want or what you need. It's when they don't, and you have to trust them to do it. Like they're going to find their own way, whatever that is. That's love. That's love at its absolute hardest. It's like, I'm proud of you. I did the best I could. You're going to do your thing. I think you're going to come back. I hope you come back, but I don't know for sure.
Right.
Either way, I love you. God, that hurts right now. God, that really hurts right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, I love big. Like, I love big. I'm all like, to the point of it drives people crazy. Like recently, David Byrne, have you ever talked to him? He does Steak from Scout Comics. He's a co-publisher. Great guy. We should get him to talk to you. But I love the guy. Like, we just vibe. And I created, he said, hey man, I'm really busy with stuff at Scout and I want to do this tour where the girl from Italy, who's my artist, is flying down. So not only did I set up the tour, I sold 4 variant covers for him, did all the thing, and just did it. And people are like, why are you doing that? Why didn't you do it for your own comic? Because I love him. Like, he's a good guy. I like him. Like, that's just who I am. Like, I don't need an ulterior motive to do that. Like, I just wanted to do it. And like, but people are so, like, we're in such a weird world where people don't understand things like that. Like, why would you do that?
Kindness is rare.
Right.
I think it's always been a rare thing. And maybe I think that, and then I think we'll wrap up after we talk about this part here.
Sure.
When I left Calgary the last time I left Calgary, so the writers community here is really awesome. Really,
okay.
Really it's amazing different people from all walks of life you could possibly imagine. So the writers conference, the last writers conference I attended here, my goal was to thank every person that made a huge difference in my life. All but one I got to. And that one, well, me and her need to work some things out. I hope we get that chance down the road.
Sure.
But with everybody else, I politely asked them to go somewhere, and then I would thank them. I watched some of the toughest people I've ever met burst into tears because they didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't expect that. But it was, you always have to be thankful. Nobody in this life has to do anything for you, ever. And I've learned this myself, just doing my thing and being myself. Just like, people are going to come and people are going to go. Appreciate them, because that will mean something to them. More than I think even I realize sometimes. Just like, thank you. Watching a one of the toughest nails romance writers you'll ever meet be able to break down, it's like, made me cry. And I do it to her friend, because she's a big role in my development too. It's like, and she's like, oh, why'd you do this? And she's sitting across the table like, yeah, he did it to me too. That's like bastard, right? But it was just being thankful. That kindness is such a rare thing that when it's absolutely genuine and people can feel it, they know it's genuine.
Yeah.
Right? They don't know what to do with it because it's truly a powerful thing. It really, really is. Because at the end of the day, people don't want much, man. They just want to be appreciated for who they are.
Right.
That's it.
And know they're seen. I think people want to be seen. They want to know that they're seen. I think we all live in a society, and I think we're smart enough to know that social media is fake. Mm-hmm. So, like, really seeing someone, not just liking their post, not just commenting, because we know those people. You think that you have this. I comment on every post. I make it. No, it's when you stop me and said, "Hey, man, like, are you doing okay?" Like, or you called, or you text, or you wrote that instant message. That's what makes a difference, not that comment. It's that extra thing that nobody else did. That really matters, and I think that those things matter. In fact, one of my writing projects for 2022 is it's called the Impact Project, and I'm gonna write 320 days of people who impacted me, and I'm gonna take a person every day, and it's gonna be everyone from celebrities to people who I've met on the street, and I'm just gonna write every day a paragraph of those and separate them and see what comes of it and see if it's worth telling. I mean, I do know it's worth telling, but is it something? I don't know if it's something marketable, right? Like who's going to read it?
So when the pandemic was at its absolute highest point, in terms of people not sure people scare on their mind, I would go on people's private messages on Facebook and I would just do a recording my voice saying why I appreciate them.
Right.
Oh my gosh, the responses I got, unbelievable from all over the world. It's incredibly humbling to know what your words can do to someone if you choose to do so. And it's a beautiful project, man. If I were to make a suggestion, if again, I don't know you,
sure.
If there are people you know in your life personally, let them see it for themselves. Because that, I promise you, I don't know if it'll be sellable, but I promise you, they will. People aren't going to remember what you did per se.
Sure.
They're going to remember what they made you, what you made them feel. And it sounds to me like you want to be thankful. And you know this as well as I do how precious time truly is.
Yeah.
Then maybe what you should do is then next year, maybe 2022, the year you go around to people and you thank them.
Sure.
That really mirrors it down. I think you would be very surprised at the responses you get.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I early on I got resistance from some of the people because I want to do like a podcast. I wanted to sit with them and then just tell our life story. Like I wanted to tell your life story. So let's say I knew you a little bit better. I would tell you who I thought you were, and then you would correct me because I think that's important. I think we make assumptions about who somebody is, and I wanted to give them the chance to correct me, and then I wanted to tell them the point in my life where they impacted me and kind of explain that.
Cool.
But some people were like, they knew they impacted me in negative ways. I would never try to go bring someone on a podcast to embarrass them, but I think that people get that fear, you know. And I'm vulnerable. I'll share my shit.
No, I totally understand it. Let me. The people that have treated me the worst, in an odd way, I'm very thankful for them.
Sure.
Because they made me understand things I never would have if everybody treated me well. And at this point in my life, to some people's chagrin, I'm like, well, there's just a certain line. If that line's ever crossed, I just walk away. Not because I'm not upset or angry like that. It's like, I'm just not going to be treated this way. That's just not who I am.
You know your value, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have boundaries. You have to have some boundaries. But I wouldn't have learned those boundaries if I hadn't been met some of the people I've met in my life. Right. That's what makes your bad moments are such great teachers that even people that treated you bad, sometimes even in those moments, if someone was really honest with you about some of the things they did, right, you might be able to find some forgiveness in where they're at too. It's actually really interesting. I mentioned my mom earlier, and I'll just say this: like, I used to hate her because of some of the things that happened when I was a kid. That's not fair, and it never was fair to just pin everything there. It wasn't. It was easy, but it wasn't fair. That doesn't mean I don't think there were some things she did that even as an adult, that I look back, I can honestly say, you should have done that. There's some things I definitely think should have been done differently. However, those lessons are very paramount to who I am and where I've come from and where I'm going to, how I view things and relationships and people and everything. And those things would not have been possible if those things didn't happen to me. Right? So I don't hate my mom anymore. We're not really in a great place because we hardly talk. But on my end, I've done all I could. So I just shrugged. And I accept the fact that, she's going to do what she wants to do. And again, there's not like a place of anger or hostility. It's just, I accept it. I love you, but I accept it. Here's my distance. Thank you for everything. Maybe someday we figure it out. Maybe we don't. Right. I'm not here. I'm right. But that's someone that's, again, has done detrimental things in my life. And honestly, looking back, I'm not going to say I wanted those things to happen,
Right.
but I learned from those things,
Sure. Well, and one of the things you said earlier, your mom was really influenced on you. She wasn't actually. She was the opposite. I spent my whole life angry at her because of my situation. Because my mom got clean. One of the things that people don't tell you when they get clean, they kind of rewire their whole life. So they're like, "Oh, I'm free from this. I missed out on all these opportunities." So they try to make up for all this lost time. And a lot of that kids get on the wayside of that, right? So as my mom was trying to build her life as an adult, I can get that. As a kid, that didn't make any sense to me, right? Why am I not the most important thing in your life? Like I don't understand. um, but when I saw my mom and I went to her funeral, my mom was a psychologist. We were there for 3 hours of people who just said, "Your mom changed my life and saved me." And I was like, I don't know this woman. But I do all these things to my friends. Like, I know at my funeral, I'll have just as many people because that's the way I live people. And I learned that from my mom, and I never knew that I knew that from my mom. And that's what hurt. Like, accepting that reality that I was shitty. I put my mom in a place that she didn't belong because I didn't let her be human.
Absolutely, and that's it. Like, and saying like I go like my parents, both of them, I treat them like human beings, both of them. I just again, unfortunately, in my situation, it's not quite that cut and dry.
Sure. Yeah.
I do think in my case, and I know this, I've missed out. Right, I
Right.
have missed out. Right, absolutely. At the same time, I really don't know what I could have done differently. In
Right.
my
Sure.
case, I'm not sure. I'm not sure you were that exact thing, right? But that's what happened. But again, those are the situations in life where it's just like you realize this, like you never really know someone. You never do, right? And right because we never see each other's walking in each other's shoes. So if that's not the best reason to be kind, I don't know what is.
That's good.
Yeah. So, Mr. Travis,
Yes.
this did not go anyway like I expected it would go tonight. But I don't mean that in like a bad way either. I just like I just do these conversations and went from comics to forgiveness and like everything in between.
Yeah, that's what's great when you don't have something to promote, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
doing a whole bunch of different things to promote, and I don't have to promote anything. My Kickstarter just ended. Holiday
yeah.
Spirits did great. We raised over 10 grand. No, it's great, but now I just get to talk and be me. And really, that's the best selling point. Hey, if you like me, if you vibe with me, buy my stuff because you'll probably like my stuff too. If you
Well,
didn't,
that's how I
probably
do.
shouldn't buy my stuff.
Yeah, that's how we do it. That's how I do my whole show all the time. Anyway,
Right,
if you had a Kickstarter going on, would have done something similar to this. It would have been a little bit more Kickstarter centric,
right,
but not. I mean, still would have been this.
right.
So, so I guess I should ask, what's the last book that's available to the public right now? Because your Kickstarter just ended. So this, by the time this airs, as an audio, it's still going to be. I'm assuming because you've done so many of these campaigns, you have your shit together pretty good. But
Yeah. I'm
yeah,
so I get them out within normally 30 days of any campaign. I finish them before I launch. That's just something I
yeah,
believe.
it's a good way of doing it, right?
Yeah, but you can find any of my stuff on Comixology. It's always on Comixology. You can find me. All my properties have their own website. So Voodoo Nations broke down a 4 Dead Body. We didn't talk about Cthulhu Invades, but basically what I do is I take fairy tales and I invade them. So Cthulhu Invades Oz is a bunch of the most talented creators I know who are way more talented than me, writing one book about what happens when Cthulhu invades Oz. Cthulhu invades Wonderland, same thing, but it's a sequel. So you go to any of these, the .coms, and you'll be able to find any of those things.
Which sounds really amazing, man. Congrats. I mean,
Thanks.
yeah. So next time we come back, would you like to come back on my show again down the road?
Yeah, I think it'd be fun. We could debate what's better, Marvel or DC, or go into rabbit holes. I love people who actually read comics.
Yeah.
Very few people who talk about comics read them. So
Yeah.
I'll always go on podcasts where they actually read comics and we can have a discussion.
Oh, totally. I don't read as much at this point, and maybe the next time we come back, we'll talk about this. It's weird because I'm reading less mainstream comics now, and I'm reading more of Kickstarter has definitely changed the game, and I think it's
Sure.
really interesting where that goes from here. I'm going to see how much I get. I'm hoping to get all 3 of my paychecks I'm getting from as a freelancer in the next few days. There's one more Kickstarter I want for sure. Just following a certain shot glass from a certain stuff because that's pretty freaking cool. But if I can, I don't know if I'm going to make that stuff. The rest of you hear this and I bid on you, kudos, I got it. And if you didn't, I just didn't have it. I'm sorry.
That's a freelance life, man. I work in web design and free all stuff. So you get paid sometimes, and sometimes you don't. It's feast or famine.
Exactly. And that's I'm at the point where I'm about to get paid, or I should get paid, but we'll see how that all plays out. Right. But
you on Friday. Fridays, there's a lot of Fridays. They never define which Friday.
Well, yeah, we definitely need to do another chat. So when is your next Kickstarter? Next Kickstarter?
So my next Kickstarter will be sometime in January or early February. That'll be Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, and I literally have the all-stars of Kickstarter. Basically anybody who's done something from Source Point Press or Scout Comics or done a really good Kickstarter the last 3 or 4 years, they're in the book. It's an all-star cast. It's a 200-something page book. It'll be really, really cool. But I'll have stuff all next year, January, February, March, a whole thing.
So. All right. So what we'll definitely check out in Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. I'm just going to put that up there for everybody to see. Yeah, that's where I think. Oh no, I did not.
Cthulhu, not Cthulhu, but it's actually go to CthulhuInvades.com. That'll go to the latest one. So it's Oz now, but then I'll go to Wonderland when Wonderland's live.
So we'll do that. So let's try that one more time.
There you go.
I'm a professional.
That's also not spelled right, but good try.
It's not. I can't.
He's a writer. This is why we need editors, folks. Editors make sure that we get these things right.
Yeah, that's right. And that okay. Let's not rush this. Let's not rush this. All right, it's on here.
Yeah, right now it'll bring you to the Indiegogo page to buy, Cthulhu Invades.
Okay, huh? I think this one.
That's it. That works.
Yeah, that's it. I got it. 3 tries, folks. Trained professional, right here. Award. Anyways, but no, dude. So in January sometime, you want to come back and we'll shoot the breeze again some more.
Absolutely. Maybe I'll bring a crew. We'll ride big with that book. We'll bring some of the creative team, and we'll have fun. We roll big when we do those because there's a lot of people, and panels are fun sometimes.
Oh, then the Tilted can be. That we totally can do something like that, and definitely look forward to it. So, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this is Travis Gibb, and this was totally a lot of fun. And me and you could probably. Oh, you should definitely look up my old episodes. I interviewed James DeMatteis. You might know him from a certain Spider-Man story.
Yeah.
But that all said, guys, this is Travis. Check out his stuff. It's amazing, creative, good dude. As for me, I think I'm just going to check my schedule here. So tomorrow is my Alice 1 launch. Now, I'm not going to say buy the book just yet because I just missed the cutoff on fixing the pre-order by like 30 minutes. So tonight, I'm up late to make sure I see if I can fix the damn thing. If so, buy the book tomorrow. I'll make the announcement. If not, you can definitely buy it December 2nd, and it will be available then for all to buy. It's on Amazon. You can get it there. If you like Alice playing croquet against Jason of the Argonauts, I promise you it'll be a wild little ride. You won't forget. That's up tomorrow. I'll be back Thursday. Until then, guys, stay inspired, keep shining in the dark, and I'll see you guys Thursday.